and live broadcast with Mayor Halevi Weinstein and guests. For those of you who are listening, we'll be starting momentarily. But since we're having a little slow progress transferring some videos we really wanted to have available this evening, we're going to have Meir on in a few moments just to talk about what's the show's about tonight, all the events happening. And then as soon as our videos are done, we'll get back on with the Parsha for the week. So without any further ado, we're going to have Meir on the screen.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm going to ask everyone if you could please share this with the various pages and groups that you're with. We'll reach a lot more people, we'll have a stronger effect. Right now, I'm just going to take a moment and share it with a few groups, and I'm hoping everybody else will do that as well. As our doctor at the studio mentioned, we do have a very interesting video presentation by Halevi Hazan, who's with the yeshiva built by Rabbi Meir, and we're going to defer the parsha, this week's parsha, to him. He gave an excellent presentation, very short and to the point. But if that video presentation doesn't occur, then I'll fill in and I'll give the synopsis of what the parsha was about. It's very important. Also, just anyways, what the parsha was about was it's Parsha's bow, when the Jewish people are getting ready to leave Egypt. But we are going to be discussing some critical issues tonight, and let me highlight some of those right now for you, what we're going to be discussing about. We have some guests that are joining us as well. There's a lot that has been occurring this past week. It's never a dull moment. One of the issues is we're going to be talking about this. It's a big issue, and I hope we're successful with this campaign as well. It's Roger Waters, and we're certainly not going to drop that issue. He's intending to perform in a lot of stadiums in North America. One of them in particular here in Toronto, Scotiabank Arena. Roger Waters in 2021 received an award from an organization with links to the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, which is a terrorist listed organization. The Center for Islam and Global Affairs gave an award to Roger Waters. The coordinator of the Center for Global Affairs is Sami Al-Arian, who pleaded guilty to one count of conspiracy to make or receive contributions of funds, goods, or services to or for the benefit of the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, a designated terrorist organization. So that's one issue that we're going to be talking about tonight. Okay. We do have a video on Roger Waters as well that we're going to be showing, but there's other issues like I mentioned. Hang on. We sent out some information earlier this week also about an individual called Paula Deek, and she works as an operational support officer for Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada. And she's hosting an event January 19th. It's called the Judaization of Jerusalem and Palestinian Resistance. And that's something we're going to be talking about tonight as well. And this is part of another one of the campaigns of Israel Now to expose this and stop this. When somebody talks about the Judaization of Jerusalem, to me, that's plain anti-Semitism. The capital of the Jewish state always has been Jerusalem. We've had temples there. We've had prophets there. We've had kings ruling, Jewish kings. That's the center of Jewish life. And to call it Judaization, I think that's almost like the epitome of anti-Semitism. Another issue we have is also the leader of an organization, CD4HR. They go under these various names, these BDS groups, Canadian Defenders for Human Rights. He had an event, his organization had an event opposite the American consulate in Toronto downtown earlier this week, last week. And they commemorated Soleimani, who was assassinated by the Americans a year ago. That's good because he was one of the main leading terrorists from Iran. And at this event, he was quoted, and B'nai B'rith was good in translating his short speech that he gave, this leader of CD4HR. He said, "We will continue fighting alongside Hamas in Palestine and Hezbollah in Lebanon." Now, both those organizations are terrorist-linked organizations designated by Canada and the United States and Western countries. And what's significant is that major BDS organizations in Canada collectively support this organization, CD4HR, Canadian Defenders for Human Rights. So that's something that we'll talk about as well tonight. Another issue, there's a long list. Like I said, this whole week has been pretty busy. There's a BDS supporter, Jamila Shakil, and she's running as the candidate in Newmarket, north of Toronto, for the Liberal Party of Ontario. Side note, for her website, she uses Wix, which is an Israeli website builder. So she's a BDS supporter. She's posted BDS nonsense on her social media platforms. We're going to be discussing her as well. And hopefully, and she takes issue also with the TDSB, with some Winthal Center, and that introduced some good educational material at TDSB. And the recent hearing there was for a Jewish trustee member that exposed and complained about a teacher that was promoting BDS anti-Semitism and would appear to be support for the PFLP. So this Jamila Shakil is on the side of the BDS when it came to the TDSB, and on the side of other personalities that were very active with the BDS, proclaiming free Palestine and such. That's a meme right there where you can see where the website that she has uses Wix, the Israeli builder, their app. So that was one. There's one more. There's also, we sent out some other information. I just got a message from Ryan. It just says, just landed in Calgary, might not make it to the computer in time. Flight got a snowstorm there, had an issue there. Okay, we'll see if he's able to get to his computer. But anyways, BDS supporter Sally Demaki from Employment and Social Development Canada posted on her social media very disturbing BDS messaging as well. So we're going to be discussing that as well. We have a lawyer with us on the show as a guest. We've had him before, Michael Tepper, and he's been doing a lot of important work as well. He's been active also. He's been he sent out some information, very relevant information about this candidate in Newmarket, and he's been very active on the issue of the TDSB as well. So we'll be discussing that all tonight. I believe we have a short video right now that we could show on Roger Waters, some of the outrageous remarks that he's been making, and we're calling on Larry Tenenbaum not to give him a platform at the Scotiabank Arena.
Thanks, Meir. I'm going to show you this little video, and everybody gets a lot out of it besides the entertainment value of it. So without any further ado, and then hopefully right after this, we'll be able to discuss the Parsha with Levi Chazan. So here's a little bit about Roger Waters. That's another one of our Israel Now productions, together with our Never Again live podcasts. So we proudly present what I'm going to just label, just to have Dear Roger Waters, kindly resume your medications. I thought that was a good way to kind of start his rants and raves. And another name for it is the Roger Waters One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and produced by yours truly. So Roger, take it away. First of all, just for those who are non-medical, there's a concept called flight of ideas. It's a symptom of a mental condition, such as schizophrenia, where a person sounds jittery, anxious, excited. There's also a concept in psychiatry called tangentiality, which is a thought disturbance, often associated also with schizophrenia and delirium. So Roger, what do you have to say about these comments regarding mental illness?
About it, because it's about not playing football against Israeli teams. So if you don't want to know about that, you can turn off now. There's a couple of things I need to say. One is that there was a bloke's name who I couldn't remember.
Well, he couldn't remember it, but he's about to tell you he did remember it. And again, what does that have to do with the Israeli football team? So that's what we call flight of ideas, when you just bounce around, and that's what Roger seems to be suffering from. And I do think there's medication that helps that.
Apart from Riyad Mahrez, who I did remember his name while I was talking about it. Very good. Oh my God, were you lot effing lucky?
If that's not classic flight of ideas, I'm not sure what is.
Hey, last weekend, I am a gooner, as I mentioned in this thing here, and things have got a little bit better. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. Referees, what can you do? Anyway, never.
Jittery, anxious, tangential manifestation, frequently seen in schizophrenia.
Mind all that. Yeah, another bloke whose name I couldn't remember is Eugene Tannenbaum. And
well, if he couldn't remember it, how is he saying it? There's a little disconnect there. I couldn't remember Eugene Tannenbaum's name. Well, I guess he remembers it.
I think he may even be the CEO at Chelsea Football Club.
And any of you listening from the United States, football is what we call soccer in most of the world, so don't be confused. When he says football league, he's not talking about people in shoulder pads and helmets knocking people down. He's talking about the gentleman's sport of soccer and the Chelsea team.
Well, he's a lovely fella, and I'm sorry I forgot your name, mate.
So please just remember that. He said, Eugene Tannenbaum is a lovely fella. Please keep that. It's important later on in this presentation.
And, yeah, do look me up, because it's been a few years.
A 2005 call from Palestinian civil society, social movements, activists around the world have created the campaign for boycott, divestment, and sanctions. And I support it wholeheartedly.
Well, we're so happy to support it wholeheartedly, but what else do we have to say? He has a tendency called what we call logorrhea. Logorrhea is defined as a communication disorder characterized by the constant need to talk, expressed by excessive, incoherent wordiness. I think Roger qualifies there. And there's also something called to confabulate. That's the creation of false or erroneous memories. Various theories of confabulation also implicate simultaneous schizophrenia and delusional behavior. Roger?
Israel is guilty of a number of international crimes: apartheid, ethnic cleansing,
and furthermore,
the leaders of Hamas have made their position clear over and over again. It is this: Hamas is open to permanent peace with Israel.
Say what? That is delusional. And how we define a delusion is a idiosyncratic belief or impression that is firmly maintained despite being contradicted by what's generally accepted as rational. It's a mental disorder. We know that Hamas does not want peace. So sorry, it's a little delusional. So Roger.
Anyway, never mind all that. Yeah, another bloke whose name I couldn't remember is Eugene Tannenbaum.
Remember, Eugene Tannenbaum.
I think he may even be the CEO at Chelsea Football Club. Anyway, he's a lovely fella.
Lovely fella.
He's a lovely fella. He's a lovely fella.
So who's Eugene Tannenbaum anyway? This lovely fella is a Zionist Jewish director of the Chelsea Football Club. He's a lovely fellow, and I can't wait to call him. That's him in the middle there. And he formed this partnership to combat anti-Semitism in sports. And there he is at center stage, giving out jerseys of the Chelsea team to this lovely fellow, to Lauder of Estee Lauder Corporation, Robert Singer, other Zionists. So I'm glad that Roger thinks that these guys are lovely fellows, because I agree with them there. So if there's anything we agree with, that is the one thing. Now, not only that, but take it a little bit further. Here's Eugene at his Zionist youth group in 1945. So he's not a born-again Zionist. He's been a Zionist all his life. And Roger thinks he's a lovely fella. Not only that, but Chelsea's owner, Roman Abramovich, is the closest associate of Eugene Tannenbaum. And there they are having a good time at one of their soccer matches. And not only is he dear friends with this lovely fella, but he's donated over $100 million to help build Jewish home developments in East Jerusalem. So Roger and I agree, these are truly lovely fellas.
You know, who he always looks when Chelsea get beaten as if he'd like to have them all fucking shot. To me, that's just to look at it. You know, you think that's the kind of guy Roman is, isn't it? And maybe it's not. I don't know. He doesn't speak to me anymore because he decided I was an anti-Semite.
Why would anybody decide that Roger Waters is an anti-Semite? I mean, that's perhaps Roman, like, you know, I'm not sure. I don't get it. So, Roger.
Because these people, AIPAC and ADL, and the other extremist Jewish lobby organization, or Israeli lobby, I shouldn't say Jewish lobby organization, or Israeli lobby, I shouldn't say Jewish lobby. Local mayor forbade them appearing on the show. Because some Jewish organization, some Israeli.
So I don't know why anybody would think that Roger's anti-Semitic. Could it be because he floats around a pig with a Jewish star on it in his concerts? Could that be misinterpreted by anybody as being an act of anti-Semitism? Okay, let's moving right along on the Roger show.
I'm talking about form. I'm talking about content. I'm talking about interrelationships. I'm talking about God, the devil, hell, heaven. Do you understand? Finally!
Yeah, Hardy, you're so fucking dumb, I can't believe it.
That's a scene, by the way, from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, if anybody didn't catch the little comedy there. So Roger believes that Hamas wants peace with Israel. Right, that's not delusional. Well, let's conclude this with something Roger can teach us. This is a lesson from Roger Waters.
We'll take back the land. We'll plant our olive trees from the Jordan River to the sea.
That's about all the sound I could take from that ruining of a song. We Shall Overcome, I might add, was Martin Luther King's favorite song. It was sung at his marches, his funeral, as well as at his memorial service.
The whole world must see that Israel must exist and has the right to exist and is one of the great outposts of democracy in the world.
So there's no way I could end this with Roger's song. So we'll do another quick closing rendition to We Shall Overcome by Anna Ross.
We shall overcome someday.
Well, that's all I got. Back to you, Meir, and then I'll see how we're doing with the rabbi's sermon. I'll be back shortly.
Okay. Well, so there you have it. And not only that, but like I mentioned earlier, he receives an award, Roger Waters, from an individual who was convicted of providing funding and support for the Islamic Jihad. What more could be said? I sent an email to, and I encouraged other people, send emails, contact Larry Tenenbaum. He should not be allowed to perform because this is going to be incitement to hate against the Jewish people. There's absolutely no question about that. 2021, he has been so explicit in his hate and anti-Semitism against Jews, against Israel. And so I'm hoping that Larry Tenenbaum will do the right thing. I should also point out there was controversy of a book that was appearing on the shelves at Indigo bookstore. The book had a map of the Middle East. It erased Israel. A lot of people contacted Indigo bookstore, myself included, got a response from the owners. Heather Reisman, she took the book off. It was 100% clear. It shouldn't be there. So we get a response from them. We're not getting a response so far from Larry Tenenbaum. What gives? I have a lot of people contacting me, and I'm talking to people who actually have a connection with him as well. So anyways, we'll get into that a lot more, and people could comment on the chat, and we'll address it. We do have a video on the Parsha from Levi Hazan. It's very important. Parsha's the Parsha that was said in every synagogue throughout the world, Parsha's Bo. And it's a very important message that Levi Hazan said. Please pay attention to it. And please also, after the show, if you could share this on your various social media platforms, we're going to be talking about what our position has to be as Jews or as supporters of Israel, what your position has to be. Thank you very much.
Okay, here goes a little intro, and I must apologize for my delay. Any technical difficulties, I'll blame on my daughter, who I spent the whole weekend with because she's very pregnant. So I just started getting this program together a few moments ago. So under the circumstances, here goes the intro that usually goes as an introduction, but instead we'll show it momentarily. Well, we're not going to begin momentarily. We're going to begin kind of right now. Actually, we've already begun. So moving right along, what our show is about, as you probably know, let's find out in 30 seconds. Now, as Meir mentioned earlier, Ryan Belrose is supposed to be with us tonight. He may not make it. So because of that, I did put together a quick 2-minute video of Ryan talking to us about why he is a Zionist, although he's certainly not an Israeli, nor is he Jewish. So we'll give a little video from Ryan. And if he makes it tonight, that's all the better.
Indigenous status means that your people had a coalescence and a genesis. Everything that makes Jews Jewish, their spirituality, their traditions, their culture, their language, everything, it stems from Israel. If you actually look at the history of the land of Israel, you can see that at one point there was this people that came here. Now this is important to understand. After like 2,000 years, their descendants that had been forcibly displaced, they had maintained a nation in exile, which means that they maintained their language, they maintained their culture, they maintained their traditions.
And despite the persecution and everything else that happened to them, the Jews managed to maintain a continuous presence in the land of Israel for over 3,000 years.
And that's Ryan again. We hope he can join us tonight. Tonight's show, as we mentioned, the initial emphasis was going to be Roger Waters, and it seems to happen. When we made that decision, so much more stuff has happened in the world, in Canada and United States and all over. So we'll talk about other things as well. And typically we have Mayor Weinstein give our little talk about the Parsha of the week, but we have a special guest pre-recorded tonight.
Shalom, everybody. Shalom. This week's Parsha, Bo El Paro. We have the conclusion of the plagues befalling the Egyptians until finally they've had enough and are releasing the Jewish people. The text tells us about this very special night of Makat HaBechorot. That Hashem himself went through Mitzrayim. And the Torah tells us Hashem shall pass through to smite Egypt. And he will see the blood that is on the 2 doorposts. Hashem will skip over the entrance. We know that we were commanded back in Egypt to slaughter the sheep, which was the Egyptian god at the time, and to take the blood and to put it on the doorposts. And this way Hashem will see it as a sign and know that there are Jews living here and pass over. Pesach, he will pass over those Jewish houses and nobody will be afflicted, as opposed, of course, to the Egyptians. Interestingly enough, though, we find by the other plagues, for instance, the plague of Dever, the epidemic, the Torah says over there, and Hashem shall distinguish between the livestock of Israel and the livestock of Egypt, and not a thing that belongs to the children of Israel will die. In that plague, we don't see any special sign that has to be given in order for Hashem to pass over, as we do over here with the signs on the doorposts when we slaughter the sheep, the Pesach, the Korban Pesach. Interesting enough, we also find during this plague that when God comes and kills the firstborn, he actually goes into the Egyptian houses because there were many dead in one Egyptian house, because there wasn't just one firstborn, there was also the firstborn of the father. For instance, if the woman of the house slept with a few Egyptian men, and each of these Egyptian men was their firstborn, all of them would be killed. So we see obviously that Kadosh Baruch Hu could distinguish between the Egyptians who were the firstborns, who weren't the firstborns, between the livestock of the Jewish people, which one belonged to the Jews and which one belongs to the Egyptians, without having any sign. Why does the Torah tell us over here, when it comes to this plague, that there needs to be a sign on the doorposts? Obviously, the Kadosh Baruch Hu could know which house belongs to the Jews and which belongs to the Egyptians. This is the question that beckons to have an answer. In fact, before we get to the answer, where was the blood placed on the doorposts? Exactly where did they place it? So there's a dispute in Chazal amongst our rabbis. Some say that the sign, the doorpost, the blood was placed inside the house as a sign to the Jewish people. Some say it was placed outside so the Egyptians could see it. Now, obviously, when we talk about the sign being outwardly, outside, this comes to show you the entire concept of Korban Pesach. It had to be eaten whole so they could see it. It had to be barbecued per se, so the smell would go all over the place, and the blood was placed outside. So the Egyptians would see that they are taking their god, so to speak, the sheep, and destroying it and eating it, and they are unable to stop the Jewish people. But according to the approach that it was inside, it obviously came as a sign for the Jewish people. This then is the answer. It's obvious that Kadosh Baruch Hu doesn't need a sign, but it was given to the Jewish people for us, in order for us to see it, in order to us to awaken our low spirit that we had at the time as being slaves, and to show us, yes, we can. Yecholim, we can overcome. We're taking the blood. It's unbelievable. The Jews at the time, they were in fear of the Egyptians, but here their blood was inside the house for the Jews to see. And I believe that it was in both places, for the Egyptians to see, and some of the blood inside the house for the Jews to see, in order to awaken the Jews and to say, we have the koach, we have the power not to be afraid of the Egyptians. Yesterday I walked on the Temple Mount, as I try to do at least once a month. With the Yeshiva Rayoni Yehudi, we go up every single month. And we were there with a group of some 30 people. And as the new custom is, we try to daven, we try to say mincha there, but we have to do it in a very low tone. We mumble, so to speak. We're afraid the police are going to come, say something to us, and take us off for praying, God forbid, on the Temple Mount. And all this comes to show us that it's really in our own imagination, this fear that we have of what the nations of the world will say. So God forbid a Jew is praying on Har HaBayit. Our rabbis teach us at the end of days, Kadosh Baruch Hu will take the Yetzer Hara and slaughter him. And the tzaddikim and the rishaim will be crying, but different tears. The tzaddikim will be crying tears of joy. They see the Yetzer Hara as a tremendous mountain, but they were still able to overcome. And the rishaim will see it as a pin drop. And even a pin drop they were not able to overcome. It comes to teach us that these rishaim, who are not able to overcome, took the pin drop and made it into a mountain and said, oh my gosh, we could never overcome such a thing. So true today. God forbid they should allow the Jews to pray on the Temple Mount, the holiest site for the Jewish people. What would the world say? There'll be riots. The Arabs will come to attack us. We break up in our imagination the worst case scenario of what was going to happen to us if, God forbid, a Jew opens his mouth on the Temple Mount. And we build up this imagination that we have and the fear that we have. For this reason, the Parsha teaches us that the blood of the doorpost was inside the house for the Jews to see, to overcome this fear, to tell us it's nothing when you have the Kadosh Baruch Hu on your side. It's nothing for him. So too today. If we would go up and be strong and take a stand, yes, the Temple Mount belongs to us. Yes, this is the way we're doing things. Yes, Jews will pray on the Temple Mount. They'll just fade away. No, the Arabs will attack us whenever they can, whenever they see weakness. It's the exact opposite. It's the exact opposite of what we perceive as reality. We have this big fear of what they will do, but the truth is, if we would do what must be done and allow Jews to pray on the Temple Mount, they would see the Jews take a stand. They're strong. They would move back. They would see this is the end of our God of the sheep. And they would understand that. That's the lesson. That's the strength that we need today to strengthen all of us, to take away this imaginary foe that we have in our faces, and not to be afraid of the nations of the world. When HaKadosh Baruch Hu is passing over the Jewish people in the land of Eretz Israel. Thanks for being with us. Parsha Shavua. I'm Levi Chazan. I'm coming to you from RE/MAX headquarters here in Ma'ale Adumim, your place for purchasing your next house. For Yeshivat Rayonu Yehudi in Yerushalayim, until next time.
Wow, that was excellent. That was unbelievable. So we have Michael Tepper with us. Is he here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Tepper. Hey, Michael, how you been doing?
I've been doing very well. Been busy with my hobby.
Right.
And I like to share some information with you as to some recent developments.
Excellent. It's been a busy week.
Yeah, it has been a busy week. Just want to give a little recap. I'm not going to give the entire history of what's been happening with Mr. Davila. You can go on my Facebook page at Everything Jewish Toronto or go to caef.ca, and you can see my previous writings and correspondence on that. So I'm not going to take up everyone's time by telling the story from day one. But I'm just going to start off by offering a few extracts of what's happened since the board meeting that took place on December the 8th that voted 10-7 to defeat the report of the TDSB Integrity Commissioner, Susan Craig, and discharge Trustee Loka from the accusations that were made against her. So on December 13th, the fellow at the center of all of this, the TDSB Student Equity Program Advisor by the name of Halevi, made a posting on his Twitter feed that said this: the HRO, which is the TDSB's Human Rights Office, Integrity Commissioner, and independent human rights expert agree resources were fundamentally mischaracterized using racist tropes. No anti-Semitism in reviewed material, 110 pages. The 3 unreviewed links found on a live page not by author, including warning and guidance. So what he meant by that is that there were 3 links that were included in Mr. Davila's materials that were not reviewed by the TDSB's Human Rights Office. And it's rather amusing, actually. He says, no anti-Semitism in the reviewed material, but the unreviewed links were not by the author. So he's implying that, yes, those links actually were anti-Semitic, but he's disclaiming and saying, I didn't write them, and I put a warning and guidance, and he thinks that that's sufficient. So that was Mr. Davila's position. And there's a candidate for the Liberal nomination in the riding of Newmarket Aurora, and if anyone in the audience who happens to be living in the riding and a member of the Ontario Liberal Party or knows someone who is, should please be paying attention to this. Her name is Shamila Shakil, and she made a Twitter posting that included the hashtag I stand with Javier, and she did this back in June of 2021. And not to live that down, I wrote a message to the president of the Newmarket Aurora Liberal Writing Association, and I'm going to take the liberty of reading it out to you. On June 23rd, 2021, Ms. Shakil posted this Twitter message. She expresses solidarity with Javier Davila, who's a student equity program advisor with the Toronto District School Board. Mr. Davila is currently under investigation by the College of Teachers for distributing 2 mailouts to TDSB teaching colleagues that contained links to websites supporting terrorism. Regarding the content of Mr. Davila's mailouts, the TDSB Integrity Commissioner Susan Craig reported to the board on December 1st, stating in part, the Human Rights Office did conclude that certain links were problematic and could be reasonably considered to contain anti-Semitic materials and seem to be contributing to anti-Semitism. In particular, some of these materials dismiss the historical connection of Jewish people to the land, lump all Israelis together, note that martyrdom operations called, quote, suicide bombing are a legitimate means of resistance, and refer to the iron fist policy of crushing the bones of Palestinian children's hands, which feeds into the blood libel. That was from page 24 of her report. Later on page 38, the commissioner states, I reviewed those resources and agreed with the independent investigators' findings that some of these could be reasonably be considered to contain anti-Semitic material, references, or allusions, overt or subtle, and could reasonably be seen to be contributing to anti-Semitism. For example, a short history on the colonization of Palestine contains some misinformation that could reasonably seem to be supporting anti-Semitic tropes. Specifically, it dismisses the historical connection of Jewish people to the land and feeds into the blood libel trope again. My People Shall Live by Leila Khaled makes statements that conflate Jewish people with Zionists, thus leveling critiques towards Jews based on their ethnic creed identity, rather than towards the specific beliefs and actions of some people in the Israeli government. There are some links to resources that support the use of violence and terrorism against Israeli Jews, specifically a link to the website of the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine that's currently on Canada's list of terrorist entities, documentary and resources about Leila Khaled, who was involved in plane hijackings, and an interview with Ghassan Kanafani, who was involved in violent actions against civilians. Based on the above and upon a review of the materials in the May mail outs, I find that they did contain some materials that could reasonably seem to be contributing to anti-Semitism. And there is a website where you can find the TDSB report. It's actually at the TDSB website. You go to the December 8th, 2021 meeting, look on the agenda, and it will show up as a PDF file, and you can see it for yourself. And so I continued that given these factual findings by the Integrity Commissioner, isn't it embarrassing for the Liberal Party to have a candidate for the legislature who stands in solidarity with someone who's facing a college teacher's investigation for posting anti-Semitic and pro-terrorist propaganda while on the job? Did this Twitter entry get documented in the candidate's vetting papers? And perhaps you should exercise some better judgment in your candidate selection process. I have yet to hear back a substantive reply from the president. They just acknowledged that receipt of the email. I've also taken the liberty of sending a similar message to each of the sitting Liberal members of Parliament. And I'm also in the process of trying to spread the word through the mainstream media. So I'm hoping that this will generate enough controversy that perhaps the Liberal Party will decide that the better part of valor is discretion, and perhaps this lady should be invited to discontinue her campaign.
So, Michael, let me ask you. So the current leader of the Ontario Liberal Party right now, he's apparently on record supporting the Jewish trustee member that was that had the hearing at TDSB that we were watching eagerly because she exposed this teacher that posted these anti-Semitic views and support for the PFLP and suicide bombings and all that. So he stood with her. So I'm just wondering.
Oh, for sure, to his credit.
Yeah, right. I'm just wondering, have you contacted him?
I have sent him emails. To be fair to him, I only started doing this as of last Thursday.
Okay.
It takes there's a process. They have to verify facts. They can't just simply. It's not like they receive an email from some guy out there on the internet and immediately take action. They have to find out who is this person? Are they telling the truth? What's actually happened? There's verification that has to happen. So I would give it at least a week before anything. I would say anything further on this, because they need to figure out what the facts are themselves.
Right. Right. No, 100%. But that's very interesting information that he's on record standing with Luca.
And DeLuca, I think I shared with you earlier, he's posted messages officially congratulating Israel on its Independence Day for several years in a row.
Right, right. So
Yes.
I'm sure this is a shocker to him.
And there's actually a comment that was made by a member of the audience that the PFLP is a Marxist-Leninist group that has long ties with KGB in Russia. That's actually an interesting point, because one of the accusations that was made against Trustee Lelka was that her Twitter message was anti-Muslim. and she denied that that was the case. And some of the evidence for that, which never got mentioned during the hearing, was that the one and only terrorist group that was mentioned in Mr. Davila's materials was the PFLP. He didn't really link to any other group. And the PFLP is not an Islamic group. It's a Marxist-Leninist group. It's a secular group. So I think that the references that were made in the Integrity Commissioner's report about Lolka's messages contributing to anti-Muslim sentiment are fundamentally erroneous and misplaced, because
I think it was
she wasn't calling she was calling out a Marxist-Leninist terrorist group.
There's another element. I believe the founder of the PFLP, George Habash, he identified himself as a Christian, so Marxist-Leninist / Christian, and therefore the Sibyl and some other organizations that I've certainly led campaigns against and protests against, who invite speakers and praise speakers from the PFLP, such as Khalida Jarrar. Sabil's on record for that, and everyone and groups that they're associated with. They are they call themselves a Christian organization that has been promoting a complete distortion against the Jewish people's claim to Israel. They deny it. They're part of the movement to say that Jesus was a Palestinian. It's got absolutely no credibility or anything, but I just thought I'd throw that in, that the founder was George Habash, and that's what he identified himself.
Right. Well, those are things I can't really comment on directly, but what I can comment on is the things that I know about, which is what happened at the TDSB,
Right.
at least the information that's public, and what's been going on in this particular political campaign.
No, absolutely, and for the record, the PFLP is responsible for terrorism.
And I'd have to say that what Shamila Shakil has done is, to my knowledge, legal. She's entitled to her opinion. She's participating in a political campaign, and she's entitled to say what she wants. The only question is, should anybody vote for her? Should the Liberal Party support her? And is her message consistent with the message of the Liberal Party as a whole? And that's something that the party leadership have to think about long and hard.
Absolutely, and therefore we have that same right to distribute information and her quotations and her social media and bring it to the attention of those who run the Liberal Party of Ontario, and just show them in black and white terms what the facts are.
And if she wins this nomination, and I don't know what the politics are in that riding, then everything that she has said in the past becomes fair game in the general election in her riding and elsewhere.
Right. Correct.
And speaking of that, I don't want to get into the details of this because I'm not privy to all of the processes of the Liberal Party, but there are means within their constitution and their member selection process for the disqualification of a candidate who expresses views that are inconsistent with that of the party. Every political party has that. Mm-hmm. And I'm hoping that process will kick in.
Now, we also have, there was an event earlier this week praising Qasem Soleimani, who was the chief terrorist of Iran that was assassinated a year ago. So the event took place outside the American consulate in Toronto, and they even lit candles. So there was the lead, and apparently the organization that put this together was called CD4HR. They're called Canadian Defenders for Human Rights. Yeah. Like Iran is human rights.
You notice something, Mayor, that
Sure.
All of these organizations have these self-serving names. Canadian Defenders for Human Rights, Canadians for Justice and Peace in the Middle East. Who could object to that? Are you in favor of justice and peace in the Middle East? Of course you are. So am I. Are you a defender of human rights? Of course you are. So am I.
I think we're going to see an organization spring up called the Palestinian Islamic Jihad for Human Rights.
As long as you call slam the word down, then that's great. It reminds me of something that happened to me in law school, where someone said that I want to become a social justice lawyer, and I just said I want to be a justice lawyer.
Right. So Memory, they did some great work, and they showed they exposed the video that was taken, the footage that was taken at this event in front of the American consulate. And B'nai B'rith, to their credit, they translated it into English. And it was astonishing what was said there. We have that short clip. Okay, so I mentioned, this is something, Michael, I'd like your opinion on. So I mentioned before that this organization, CD4HR, they have the support of all the major BDS groups in Canada, including CJPME. They include them in they call them a civil society group. Organization.
Okay, I'll be 5 minutes.
Organization Vote Palestine uses them as well. There's no condemnation. There you go. They're very clear, the CD4HR, what they would like. They say death to America, all that. Oh, I guess Michael will join us in a moment. So this organization is very clear. Now, so Michael, what does that say about these other BDS organizations when we have this particular person who's running, for instance, in Newmarket and other places, people who link up with these different so-called legitimate, and I say so-called legitimate BDS groups, when they are tied with this guy who stands outside the American consulate and says what he says?
We can't draw inferences of ties without evidence. We need to have solid evidence before we say that someone is tied to something else.
Well, they include the CD4HR in their letters they sent out. We have this group with us. We're with this group, and that group. They send it out.
Yeah, so when I see direct linkages, I can make linkages. It's only if I see a clear evidentiary trail that I can say anything about one person being linked to something else. Making claims about somebody being tied to somebody else without evidence is a great way to get sued.
No, I'm just saying they include them in their letters that they send out.
Yeah.
Here
Yeah,
we
and
have
once I see something like that, then I see the direct evidence of it, and I can evaluate it, then I can go forward on it. But without direct linkages, I can't really say much. But what I can say is that there's obviously a continuum where you get a spectrum of people, and what you just showed in the video is one extreme element of the spectrum. But Breath is launching this campaign to try and have the corporate charter of this organization revoked. I'm not sure how successful they're going to be on that.
We even have a video of David Mavusser, who's with the Independent Jewish Voices now. He was charged with throwing paint at the in front of the Israeli consulate.
Yeah, do you know what happened with that? Did anything go forward with those?
Don't know yet. Don't know. But we'll find out. But I have a video of David Mavusser from the Independent Jewish Voices, who's with the leader of this organization from CD4HR. Again, sprouting garbage. So we just see all these. This one knows this person. This one's
yeah.
That one.
We just have to be very careful about looking at the evidence for any linkages before I can go formal and say that one person is connected to another or is allied. So, for example, with this liberal candidate and her connections to Javier Davila, I can say that she has posted not one but probably about half a dozen entries on her Twitter feed where she's been promoting lectures and events that were hosted by Mr. Davila and quoting him. So she has pretty close connections to Mr. Davila. Whether she has connections to anybody else, I don't want to speculate on.
Right, that's fine. I'll send you the letters. You'll take a look at them.
Yeah,
that's fine. That's fine. But would be a good thing if XYZ BDS organization that claims to be embracing Canadian values and so on and so forth, and that would publicly, or XYZ Islamic organization would publicly denounce the CD4HR for statements that were made in front of the.
Anyway, I'm really sorry. I have to go. I'm being called by some folks at home, but I'm very, very grateful for the opportunity to come and speak.
Michael, thank you very much.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Well, it doesn't look like Ryan is going to be joining us. Unfortunately, something happened with his flight. There was a major snowstorm. For anyone who doesn't know, he lives in Alberta, Canada, Western Canada, and the weather there is quite severe during this winter season right now. I believe we have an interesting meme to show about the hunger strikers going on. They're going for the world record in hunger striking. 140 days, 150 days, 160 days, 920
Let me
years.
interject there that we know that you could survive 72 hours with no food or water. You probably can go on for like a week or two if you have some extra fatty tissue that most American Canadians do. But it is either he's getting manna from heaven or he's getting chocolate from his friends. I'm not sure what it is. But here's a artist rendition of the miracle that we've all been witnessing.
Yeah. You're a hunger striker. Here you go. Here's your steak. Here's your burger. Here's your cake. Here's any.
Again, a true modern miracle for medical science.
It's incredible. But when we started the show, I rattled off a number of concerns that we have, and one of them is the individual who's running in that riding in Newmarket. But there are other individuals who have government positions, and in the immigration department, in the employment department as well. And this information has to get out, and we have to make sure that people are educated, who is who, and take action. So that's what we're doing. So I'm calling on our supporters out there. Go on our website, israelnow.ca. Make a contribution. We need the funds. We need to get a lot done. We need to get a lot of work done, a lot of progress made. And people are making donations, but we need more. We need to upgrade our website, obviously. We need to reach a lot more people. We need to pay social media platforms in order to advertise our shows, our information. If every time we do a send out, an email blitz, and we share it on, for instance, Facebook, we need to be able to pay Facebook. Whatever it is, $36, $50, $100 at a time, in order to reach thousands of people with any mass email that we sent out, any announcement we have, any video we have to do the same thing. That's where you come in. We need your support for that. This, what's going on right now is an information war. And we can't be asleep at the switch. That's one critical thing that we learned during this whole Corona pandemic. Use social media, get the information out there, and get it out there as fast as possible on the many platforms that you have, be it Twitter, be it Facebook, be it Instagram. We need to use these vehicles to get the truth out. And we're quite effective. You know, last year, 2021, we accomplished a lot. One major accomplishment was we assisted getting the information out there to CUPE members to shoot down the vote to legitimize the BDS. That's very important. We were extremely active on the TDSB, Toronto District School Board issue. Very good, successful on that. It's not over either. We were also tremendously effective with the Museum for Human Rights in Winnipeg, convincing them not to adopt the Nakba and equate that with the Holocaust. It's outrageous, but we worked hard on that issue. There's a lot more that we worked on as well, and we're effective. We're going forward this year. We rattled off, listed a lot of issues that we've been involved with this past week. We need your support to get this out. And without you, without your support, we can't reach the masses. We have to reach the masses. And the people we reach, it's quality. You reach some influencers. You reach some people who will write an article about this, that will use this information on their podcasts. You know, it's the butterfly theory. We also were effective when there was BDS. They wanted to have a Bikers for Palestine rally through the Jewish community. Can you imagine that? We got that canceled. We got it canceled. We're successful. And just remember, you know, in the UK, in London, England, there was a similar type of Bikers for Palestine rally where they're driving through the streets and shouting obscenities, rape Jewish women. We have to stand up to all this hate and this anti-Semitism. As Levi Hazan said, we have to take on a different personality moving forward from the lesson of the Parsha. Parsha's bow, yeah, you look at the blood, the Jewish people look at it. They have to change. We have to understand what it means to be Jewish and shed off this exile mentality and take on a proper Jewish mentality and stand up for the truth. That's courageous. That's being Jewish. We look over at Israel, how successful Israel is. Past year, as Meir Jolowitz, our last guest on the previous show, went on about the GDP in Israel is About last year was about $450 billion. And the projection is heading into this year, 2022, it's going to exceed $500 billion. And that doesn't even amount for or account for the potential oil and gas deals that's going on, and also the deals that are going on with the UAE and Bahrain. In fact, I think it was the UAE that was talking about trade with Israel that will eventually exceed over $1 trillion. I mean, this is significant. The population in Israel, there's over 7 million Jews living in Israel now. That's historic. That's incredible. Israel has more Jews than anywhere in the world now. That's historic. That's a sign of the Messianic age. There's no question about it. What Levi Hazan was talking about, the Temple Mount, going up and praying. Listen, there's got to be a change. There's got to be a change, and Jews can't be afraid anymore. The BDS, they're dandruff. You got to stand up for the truth. We've always been a minority. Always. Doesn't matter. You have to look yourself in the mirror and speak the truth. You have to embrace the truth of the Torah. Never be afraid. Never be afraid. Just wondering, our doctor in the studio, is there any other video that we're missing that we haven't
Well, you know
shown?
what I'd like to show? We've showed it many, many months ago. It's about 8 minutes long, but it's a liberal rabbi in New York City telling his liberal, progressive Jewish audience that we were wrong. And I don't think it would be a bad idea to just to show that video again to those who may have missed it. And I think what's also pertinent to show is that, I mean, basically who he's really talking to are these groups. I mean, he's specifically addressing. So, Meir, is that okay if I go and show the video?
I think that's he was.
I think it's a good way to start. And also to echo what you just said, and I agree totally that those who are watching, although there are only 15 or 20 people watching, hundreds and hundreds of people watch afterwards. And Jews in general, we're not out there with our hands out, but anybody who wants to support our mission and help us write articles and send letters and more success for next year, as Meir said, we stopped a anti-Semitic motorcycle rally, we prevented an Nakba exhibit, and I really do think if you look back that we were the ones who initiated, and then after us, all different Zionist groups followed suit. But somebody has to do it first. And Meir, you've been very good at doing it first. So let's listen to Rabbi Hirsch from New York for a few minutes. And then, Meir, I'll give you some closing comments, and then I'll play a little song. How's that sound?
Excellent.
Okay. I'm a liberal rabbi. And you are liberal Jews. And in my view, many liberal Jews are misled by the high-sounding rhetoric of anti-Zionist students, liberal professors, thought leaders, influencers, media and social media personalities. For some, the term social justice now means that Israel is to blame for racism in American police departments. Even our own Jewish concept of tikkun olam, repairing the world, has been co-opted by some and distorted to virtue signal their moral purity. 20% of American Jews, 1 in 5, believes that Israel is committing genocide on the Palestinians, according to a recent Pew study. 1 in 5. What a colossal, catastrophic failure of the American Jewish establishment, rabbis, teachers, schools, all of us. Everyone. It's my job to counter these messages. If you don't hear it from me, you won't hear it at all. Even many rabbis nowadays fear telling the truth that they know to be true, but are too intimidated by their congregants or whatever, too intimidated to express. You may not agree. Some of you might be bubbling over now with persuasion. But it's still important that you hear my views. Perhaps at some later date, you might reconsider. And all the rest of you, you might be fortified to hear that you are not alone. What you have been thinking is what I think. The need for a fair, equitable, and peaceful settlement to the Israel-Palestinian dispute is urgent. Both peoples have an indisputable claim to the land and to human dignity. But pro-Palestinian activity, especially on college campuses, all of you college kids who are here and listening online, pro-Palestinian activity is often led by those who do not seek accommodation with Israel. They seek its annihilation. And we call that anti-Semitism. Israel, for the first time since antiquity, is home to a near majority of the world's Jews. More than half of all Jewish children in the world live in Israel. Threats to destroy the Jewish state are threats to destroy the Jewish people. When they shout, Palestine free from the river to the sea, they mean destroy Israel. Free Palestine for them does not mean coexistence with Israel. It means Palestinian existence without Israel. Ask them. They don't hide it. They simply rely on your ignorance and naivete because they spout words that sound progressive to you. Human rights, civil rights, indigenous rights, anti-racism, anti-apartheid, anti-colonialism. For them, it is nefarious Jewish power, centrally organized by Israel and supported by world Jewry, standing in the way of peace, prosperity, liberation, and justice. That is what justifies assaulting Jews in a sushi restaurant. By virtue of their Jewishness, they are complicit in the worldwide Jewish conspiracy to suppress human rights, organized and financed and led by the Jewish state. If these agitators were truly about human rights, they'd be concerned about the real threats to human rights. The thousands of missiles indiscriminately fired upon Israeli civilians from Hamas, a terrorist, fundamentalist, misogynistic, gay-hating regime implacably opposed to Israel's existence and implacably committed to Israel's annihilation. What in the world are progressives doing supporting such people? If they were truly concerned about human rights, they'd be concerned about the 500,000 Palestinians still confined to Lebanese refugee camps 73 years after Israel's fall. They would speak against the rampant anti-Semitism and blood-curdling threats to annihilate the Jews. They would advocate on behalf of the hundreds of millions of Arabs and Muslims deprived by their own regimes of human rights and human dignity. You speak about ethnic cleansing, and not about Muslim Uyghurs in Chinese concentration and re-education camps. You speak about massacres, and not a word about the thousands of Palestinians and other Syrians gassed to death and the hundreds of thousands butchered by a brutal dictator. How dare you equate Israel with Nazis? Have you seen what the Nazis did? You cannot subcontract your defense and protection to anyone. Least of all, fellow human rights activists and their deluded American Jewish supporters who sit in ivory towers, intellectuals who write and think all day, who preen with academic arrogance, but are incapable of understanding what is really going on in people's hearts. Preoccupied with their own shallow self-righteousness, they ignore even basic human emotions, motivations, and drives. Bleeding hearts who have no heart for bleeding Jews. It's all academic for them. We should have the courage, the decency, the honesty to say that our side, the liberal side, is wrong. We too are writing and supporting untruths, vicious, malicious, voracious, fallacious, rapacious, audacious lies. All of us, especially young adults, teenagers, university students, you need to feel anti-Semitism. Feel it in your kishkas. You know the difference. It's been handed down to you generation after generation after generation. Learn to appreciate subtlety, nuance, and context. Develop the capacity to distinguish between legitimate critique and the new mutated form of anti-Semitism dressed up in the garments of pathological anti-Zionism. If you oppose Israeli policies, say so. Be active. Try to influence and make a difference. But whatever you do, you cannot give comfort, cooperation, and credibility to those who hate your people.
Wow.
Yeah, pretty powerful. Just before I give you the last word, I thought it'd be appropriate just to go and put on a little word from Menachem Begin, who says, that we don't have trembling knees. Nobody came to our aid when we were dying in the gas chambers and ovens. No one came to our aid when we were striving to create our country. We paid for it. We fought for it. We died for it. We will stand by our principles. We will defend them. And when necessary, we will die for them again. And that's what we need to do. And that's what, unfortunately, the majority of Jews are not doing this. But hopefully more of you will join us. Meir, I'll give you the last word before I pick a song for the evening. Thank you all for joining us. Meir, take it away.
Okay. Well, again, thank you everyone for joining us. Please share this on your various platforms, be it Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Let's reach a lot of people. That's generally what happens after the show. Not everyone watches it live, and a lot of people start sharing it. That's fine. But also, I'm asking you again, please go onto our website, israelnow.ca. That's israelnow.ca. Make a contribution, make a meaningful contribution. We use it. There is no paid staff with our organization. And we're leading the way. There's absolutely no question about it. Jewish leadership is asleep at the switch. We have a lot of work to do. We're not waiting for them to wake up. They will eventually wake up. Thank you very much.
Okay, Meir, I'm going to play two songs. One, both of which you played before, but this, I think, for a little closing on a positive note, I think everybody will enjoy this. Well, it's not streaming too well, so I'm going to give it another minute. Let's see how it goes. Having some streaming difficulties.
There's a problem with that stream. Don't know what it is. We'll have a tikva on in a moment.
Exactly. Boy, we're having some technical streaming difficulties tonight. I'm not sure if it's the internet or the cold weather, but so we'll pocket that one for next week, and let's see if we could play this one through. If it does stop streaming, Meir, I'm going to put you back on and we'll skip a song, but hopefully this one will show the resiliency, the hope, the future of our great country.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much for joining us. Like I said, please share this, and also go on our website and make a contribution. Got a lot of work to do. The word is from Israel right now. They're opening up the skies. I hope everyone's going to be safe. But take advantage of this now. Go to Israel. Visit your friends, visit Israel. It's just, it's hard to describe. It's the Jewish future. That's it. It's the Jewish future. From the river to the sea, Israel will always be. And that's it. It's an obscenity. When you look at the Middle East, the map of the Middle East, tiny little Israel, and the BDS campaign and various Islamic groups and supporters of Hezbollah, Hamas, Iran, they want Israel wiped out. It's a tiny sliver in the Middle East compared to the landmass controlled by Arab countries and followers of Islam. It's pure anti-Semitism. There's a map. Little tiny Israel. That's the obsession. That Jews should not have any sovereignty in the Middle East. Everything was legal. The land was purchased legally by the Jews, Jewish National Fund, by the book. Even though we do it by the book, and we did it by the book in the days of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob also purchasing in the land of Israel. That's our heritage. That's our land. That's our claim. That little tiny sliver they want to deny. And as Levi Hazan said, they're upset if Jews will pray on the Temple Mount, where our temple stood. It's anti-Semitism. Wake up, smell the coffee, and embrace the Torah, and don't be afraid. I'm Meir Weinstein. Thank you very much for joining us.
Shalom